Welcome to a new edition of If I Ever Live to Be. Today, I am joined by Chris Britton. He is founder, CEO, and general manager of RockDove Solutions. Chris, thanks for joining me today.
Whitney, it's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And I always love to give a shout out when we have a mutual connection that introduced us. So I have to say hello and thank you to Buffy and Matt Payne. And they came on the podcast not too long ago. So there are episodes out there. Yeah, they really are. They're amazing. And then we actually got to meet in person, you and I, at their Outer Circle Foundation golf tournament a couple of
That's correct. We won't talk about handicaps or scores. We'll stay focused on all the fun and the noble cause that was there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that means I don't have to mention like going the wrong way on a golf cart or anything like that.
No, we'll keep that all. What happens on the course stays on the course.
Right. So we're recording this in October. So when everyone else is listening to this, it's going to be November because that's fast approaching, if believe it or not. But it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which really should be a year-long thing, right? Like I feel like I am constantly just to tee off this conversation because I want to kick it to you and you tell us specifically what RockDove Solutions does. But I feel like we are so used to hearing XYZ company has experienced a data breach or something related to cybersecurity that we almost don't even pay attention anymore. It just kind of like doesn't faze us. We're like, oh, something else happened. So tell us how you're combating that and a little bit about RockDove Solutions.
Yeah, just as a background, RockDove Solutions is a software company that has been in operation for over a decade now. We serve organizations of all sizes across the world with ways to mitigate and manage emerging threats. And those threats can come in the form of cyber that we're speaking of at the moment. And they can come from weather. They can come from, as we've all experienced with the hurricanes that pass through the Southeast.
Right.
We also support organizations that are dealing with things like civil unrest and workplace violence and other things that can disrupt the orderly operation of a business, the safety of their employees, and ultimately the duty of care that officers of a company have to the company and to its people.
Yeah. One, I would be remiss if I didn't name some of the companies that you work with because you work with Hershey, Sony, Toyota, Intuit, which, all the small business owners listening, especially with Intuit, like that's our money, right? And there's really sensitive information out there. So with that, because you just largely expanded just now, even the way I think about these things, which is probably every business owner. What are some of those most common threats, right? Because so some of the companies I just mentioned are rather large, but, even for small business owners, there's so much to think about, right? And so do you see that security issues are kind of pushed to the back burner of everything else?
No, I don't think so. I do think organizations and leadership are very aware at this point of the consequences. You're seeing much more activity at board level for organizations. Smaller organizations, ownership realizes that the consequences are grave. The potential for cyber attacks are not a matter of if, but when. Every organization today is being faced with having to put out cyber attacks. It's not an environment where you're saying, I hope it doesn't happen here. It is happening everywhere. It's a question of what defense systems the organization has put in place to mitigate the impact to their organization. When you look at the types of attacks, you mentioned that earlier, what kinds of attacks are we seeing? They range from malware to which is things that hide and show up and cause damage to computer systems, to ransomware attacks that are intended to disable, extract information, and hold it hostage for a ransom to be paid. to an organization or bad actors or a country that's operating inappropriately. This is happening every day. What organizations are learning to do and where we're headed and how we help is we recognize now that to deal with cyber attacks takes the entire organization working together. Because the way cyber attacks work is they're taking information gathered in one place or another place, or systems that you may be buying. Take, for example, what happened with CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a software used in cyber defense. And what happened is literally they did an update to their product, and in doing the update, it disabled Office 365 for a large number of customers. Well, wow. What's happened in the cyber world that's different than ever before is we've become so interdependent on automation that when something happens, it's not just there. It's not a departmental problem. It becomes an ecosystem problem. If you look at the CrowdStrike example that I mentioned, Delta Airlines was down substantially in its systems and some of its routing and reservations for days. And that ripple effect caused lots of other problems. And this was true across banking. This was true across many different industries. And we call that a domino effect. And so what you're seeing now with cyber is not just the initial attack and the scope of impact that it has on a system, but how that system going down can impact many other related or interdependent systems. So one of the areas that we've been talking about a lot is infrastructure like energy, and making sure that energy in our country is being protected. So huge consequences around cyber. How we help in the role that RockDove Solutions plays, we have a platform which is called 365 CEM, and it is the platform that helps organizations bring together the various parts of the business into a unified picture of everything that's going on related to an emerging threat, be able to identify it, assess it, and then coordinate a response so that all the areas of the business are being simultaneously supported. Because the truth is, when you have an event, whether it's a cyber attack or one of the many other hazards that can impact an organization, it can have impact on customers, it can have impact on regulatory compliance, it can have impact on supply chain, it can have impact on the banking system, the payroll system. So really have to be careful in how, as an organization, you set up to manage these events to make sure you're looking at the entire picture. And as a result, that's why senior leadership has become much more involved in managing these events and making sure they have a hand in how they're being coordinated, because of the impact it can have on the future of that business.
Yeah. It's interesting because I saw on your website, you had noted that, planning is critical, but really recent statistics show that it's not enough just to have a plan. So walk us, through what that means, because I would wager maybe some people think we've got a plan and we know how we're going to handle it. And so they know the step by step, but then how do you implement that plan?
Yeah. Well, it's great that you pulled that out. That, in fact, is at the core of what we see as a challenge for businesses in this environment. That, with a clear eye, we develop plans with the best intention. And many of those plans that we do in best practice, we want to do testing and training and run through scenarios with our employees. So we start off down the path of trying to build a culture of safety and security in the culture of our organization. But one of the challenges many organizations face is that those plans are lightly read. They're people that have day jobs that are dealing with this stuff only when it becomes necessary in their mind. It's not their primary job. Their primary job is to sell, to do accounting, to do marketing, to do engineering. And so the idea that they are going to manage these types of events or be instrumental in these types of events isn't for the forethought in their mind. What we've learned and what we do is we've developed workflow automation that allows us to take the essence of a plan, the workflow, the rules, the who needs to be involved in what way and what should we do next. And we've automated that so that when a person is faced with a situation they need to jump into, rather than them having to read a book or make a lot of calls to figure out what they need to do, they can operate directly through the sequencing of the system to do all that. And that just takes away so much of the stress and the uncertainty about what people need to do. Because one of the other things that happens is when people are put into a crisis, the level of anxiety and the challenge that goes with it can often limit the clear thinking and the fluid motion. Anybody that's been put into a high dramatic situation can recall how it's suddenly your ability to think lucidly and freely gets limited, and it's normal. That's just normal the way it works. So by having systems like this that can take away some of the need to be thinking out of the box in a moment like that, we can really help to ensure that each time we're faced with a situation like that, we can put our best foot forward.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just did a podcast on, well, I say I did it. I was a supporting role. It's really the Leadership Foundry podcast with Brandon Smith and Randy Hain, and they're fantastic authors, speakers, executive coaches. And we were talking about uncertainty and coming at it from, the leader entering or continuing into uncertain times and what happens when we don't have all the answers, but naming the anxiety, naming the threat, if you will, and then having a plan, even if it's not all the pieces, right? Like just having a plan decreases that level of anxiety. And even if you feel like you have, okay, if this happens, then we're going to do A, B, C. Well, maybe you get to A and B is already changed. Still having a starting point, I feel, just helps your team rest in the fact that, okay, when this happens, at least we have a starting point to where we know what we need to do. Everybody take your place, do the next step, instead of running around like those memes we see of like fires everywhere and everyone's just running around in circles trying to figure out what are we supposed to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And everything I described earlier does not take away in the least the need to start with a plan.
Yeah.
You really do have to have a plan. And a lot of people also get too caught up in the literal sense of a plan where they say, oh, the plan has to cover everything and anything. Really, what a plan is a framework. It's how does this organization take information in? How does it manage that information? And what are the really good ways that we can ensure a good outcome in the steps that we take to respond? And a lot of really good planning is about building that framework and aligning it to our culture and our way of doing business, and making sure then that we have something that's repeatable and effective, and getting the right minds in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Chris, can you speak to AI's role in all of this, right? Like I heard a recent story, and it was a employee, and they felt like they had a call from their leader, someone higher up in the company, telling them to do certain things like, hey, we need to move money from here over here, or this plan was changed. We talked about doing this and now we're going to do this. Well, they thought that it was their boss on the other end of the line. I've heard, voices being disguised, even video now, right? Like you could be on a video call or receive a video message. We send those all the time through email even, and it's not the actual person. So how do we combat, how do we even know it's so believable, right? It's so advanced now, and I assume it's just gonna continue to do so, but it's hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah, I know you're hitting on a really emerging challenge for a lot of organizations and a lot of individuals, and that is who to trust and what to trust. When you look at content, AI has the ability to produce content that is a mashup of many things that can recreate a scenario that never happened. And it can be a video, voiceover, script that didn't apply to the individual in the least or the organization in the least. And so we're seeing this as somewhat of a generational thing. You look at young kids today, their ability to discern AI versus reality is going to be much better than my generation that built around trust in media and trust in content in general. We have a default that says it's likely true before we think it's not. So it's becoming very, very interesting. Some of the research being done that I'm unable to cite at the moment, but I can tell you is a truth, is that for those of us that are farther along in our careers, we're actually going to have the biggest adjustment to make to how we trust content. And overall, AI is going to affect us in a number of ways. As we know, the social media model was about engagement as an engine. And at that level, we've struggled because as a society, the engagement engine is feeding us more of what we want. And that's how it keeps us tied eyeballs and ears to what we're looking at. And that engagement engine just says, oh, that's what you want. I'll give you more of that. That's what you want. I'll give you more of that. And then it starts and it doesn't matter on the back end whether it's true or false. It's just how it engages. Now AI comes into the picture and AI goes farther. AI gets us now into, oh, you don't like that content, but you like this content. Let me create some new stuff that meets more of what you like. And it gets now into no longer just finding content creators, but becoming the content creator. And so it's a huge, huge challenge. So what are we going to use to fight that? We're going to have to use AI. We're going to have to use AI, and we're going to be seeing as time progresses, AI becoming able to discern truth from fake as part of our tools to develop ways to deal with things that the human eye can no longer pick up.
That's interesting that you say that because another kind of follow-up question I thought around this is what do you say to those leaders, right? Because you know, if you're an employee, you're just trying to do your job and you probably don't want to go to your boss all the time and be bothering them with questions. You know, I think of that poor employee that thought that they were doing the right thing. And, could they have gone to their boss and like double checked that this is really you because it looked like them? I mean, how do you handle that situation?
Yeah, I know we're definitely on a learning curve, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but part of this is the culture, right? You create a culture with leadership, starting with leadership, where you put it on the table and say, look, there's things going on here that are different than what we have experienced in the past.
Yeah.
And so we're going to need to be more understanding of those possibilities and the nuances of information and content and source and verification. It's going to be key. So as the organization develops new strategies on dealing with verification, as employees, we're just going to have to be much more fastidious about saying, I need to challenge things that don't seem right, that don't sort of fit the normal picture.
Right.
And then as an organization, we're also going to have to understand that there's going to be victims in this process. We clearly, AI is a very powerful thing. And that's why the greatest minds in the world are spending day and night trying to figure out the consequences and the ways to manage AI overall, because it truly is a very, very powerful thing that can become a very wonderful thing, and also a very bad weapon. Like the advances that are being made with AI in medicine are incredible.
Right.
I mean, you take cancer treatment. Cancer treatment is very, very unique to every single patient. And they're using AI now to develop strategies to treat each individual patient with millions of different combinations. And you could never do that before you had AI, being able to take that on. Yet AI can also be sinister, right, in the way that it can reenact and imitate a person or a situation and cause people to do things they would otherwise not do.
Right. Do you see, Chris, certain industries being more targeted than others when it comes to this?
Well, I think we always follow money. Money is the number one thing that you're going to see all forms of cyber type attacks, and AI being a tool within the arsenal of that. I think the number two is going to be politically motivated, and whether it's a tax on energy or a national interest, you're going to see that kind of thing. So those are kind of the more high profile examples. Political, governmental, but financial is probably number one.
Yeah. So how did Chris get into the security space? What inspired you to do this and to even form a company around it?
Well, so I've been for now just about 4 decades in technology, and I started off with working in communications at a little company called AT&T many, many years ago, and I found a great enjoyment in helping bring technologies that could help society and improve the way we live, and safety and things like that were just a passion in terms of how they related to technology. And was involved in several startup organizations over the years, dealing with aspects of what we just talked about, from public affairs arena to safety, security, to emergency management. And it seemed like no matter where I went, it always gravitated in that direction, which I love. I mean, it's fabulous and it's exciting, but there's nothing more. And I tell this to new people joining our organization all the time. So there's nothing greater than being able to do something you love doing and knowing that you're helping people as well. And so it's sort of that level of satisfaction you get out of your job where you can wake up every day and feel like it's a win-win. And that to me is awesome. I highly recommend it. It's good for your health.
Right. Right. What is the quote? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So true. So true. I have no plans to stop what I'm doing. I enjoy it. I love it. I think you surround yourself with people that are smarter than yourself, and you just give them the ability to do what they need to do.
Yeah. How do you stay on top of emerging trends?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. As a tail end of the baby boomer generation, one of the things I learned a long time ago was you can either tell everybody else what to do, or you can get in there with them and do it. And I the latter, because I find I learned a tremendous amount about technology. I learned a lot about what people are facing as challenges by being in there with them in the trenches. So I get in there, I try to understand, and don't be afraid. Learning is the secret to life. And so the more you embrace it, instead of treating it as something, well, I know what I need to know, the better.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's interesting because when I was looking through your background on LinkedIn. You have a great sales background. And I just saw this quote a couple of days ago that said, fall in love with resilience, because I feel like, and even tying that back into learning, like learning comes after failure, right? That's where we learn some of life's greatest lessons. And I feel like even in this space, I mean, technology is constantly changing so much. To your point, you can do what you can do with the information you have in this moment, and then also realize the next time you face a situation, it may be completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what makes it fun, right? I mean, if you like challenges and you like the idea of being able to evolve and embrace change, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I find that when you embrace change, you embrace the opportunity to take a situation and move it in a better direction. That's the joy for me. I could think of nothing better to do than do that. And so being in a smaller company and being able to see that company grow, succeed, and evolve, I think is huge.
Yeah.
Great fulfillment there. Great watching young folks come into the organization and go out of the organization much smarter, much more qualified, and able to take on challenges much greater.
What do you think is the difference between those people who embrace change versus resist it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily. I understand that some might say those are more sane people because the road may be a little softer. But look, I think that for those that it's sort of like people that like roller coaster rides and people that don't. To a certain degree, I enjoy change because with it comes uncertainty and a test of your own mettle. At the same time, the joy of succeeding. There's just a wonderful feeling there. Some people enjoy the idea of maintaining and curators, the people that really do that. So I don't think one is bad and the other's not. I think it's just a matter of make sure you line up who you are with the job you take, and you'll be happy in life.
Yeah.
That's really what it becomes.
Yeah. I love that. So my last question for you around this, because I kind of get the feeling you probably have a multi-generational workplace. Like it sounds, because I hear you talking about hiring, youngsters. What do you look for when you're hiring like Gen Z and us millennials coming up through the workforce today?
Yeah, it's funny because one of the first things you learn is none of your jokes are any good. Your reference points are all completely, things they've never heard of, and so what I'm looking for are people that have the drive and the desire to succeed and have a good compass, about what they care about, what they're passionate about, um, and a willingness to learn in the roles they're in. And I mean, if you bring that every day, and you're somebody that's willing to learn and has that great attitude, you're going to be successful. My job as an employer is to give you the right challenge. If I'm setting you up in a place or in a situation that doesn't fit, that, then I've hired at the wrong level, or I've created a job that doesn't exist. I mean, we've all had those jobs. We've all been in that situation where,
Yep.
It feels like there's a disconnect between what I'm being asked to do and who I am. And so my job as an employer is to match things up. Good ER.
Who are the individuals that stand out on your team? What makes them different?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I love them all. So they're doing a fabulous job, honestly. I think we have a wonderful group in that everybody on the team is focused on their mission. I don't have people sitting in one job thinking they should be in another. We're really well defined, but we're a small group. And so everybody on the team wears their hats, and I say hats plural. And we have a great environment where I don't have to worry about how hard they're working. I know that they believe in the mission, to do something to bring value to the customers we serve and the important mission they have. So I think once we have that kind of alignment, they're all doing great, and I'm really super fan of all of them. I don't have a situation where I've got this person's good and that person I'm not sure about. They're all good people. They're all doing great. I wouldn't change it for the world. I hate the grading systems when people say, like, is this an A player or a B player?
Yeah.
Because we could easily say, is this an A manager or a B manager? You know, in reality, it's, do we have a committed group that's successful and focused?
Yeah, I love that. This has been fantastic, Chris. If our listeners want to get in touch with you and learn more about RockDove Solutions, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, we have a website at rockdovesolutions.com, which they can go to. It's a public website. It's one of the easiest ways. If you want to drop me a line, you can reach me at chris.britton@rockdovesolutions.com, and I will return your correspondence. Just general sales at rockdovesolutions.com is another one.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've learned so much. This has been super informative.
Whitney, it was great. Thank you so much for having me, and to your audience, thank you.